Alhamdulillah wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. So inshallah we'll get started where we left off, and we previously in the last class
recording in progress.
in the last class we started up with Kitab al-Siyam, and in this, of course, Siyam is something that's coming up in just a short while, and so it's important for us to know about this. In the last class, we went over the conditions for Siyam to be obligatory, or the fasting to be obligatory, and also we talked about some of the like the pillars, or like the things that are obligatory for the actual fasting of Siyam to be to be complete. And of these, we mentioned that it needs to be with niyyah, and that all of that we need to have that intention, and we also need to have the intention, and we also need to have the abstaining from eating, drinking, intercourse, and inducing vomiting. All these things that would break it. And then we talked about some of the things that broke a person's fast. And in the last class, I mentioned a lot of extra things besides just the 10 things that are mentioned here in the book. But I went and added a bunch of extra ones out there because of the need for that. And of course, a lot of these are things that are like modern day issues that we would come into. And we would come across. So it's important that we know what breaks the fast and what doesn't break the fast. And so the thing that we'll talk about today, and we'll pick up where he left off here, that he says here, وَيُسْتَحَبُّ فِي الصَّوْمِ ثَلَاثَةُ أَشْيَاء. So Abu Shujaa, rahimahullah, he says that it's preferred to do three things for the fast. And of course, there's more than just three things, but these are three things that he mentions here. As this book is like a small book, it's not a big book going into tons of details. And so he says here, of the first of these three things that he mentions, he says ta'jilul fitr. And then he says the first one, which is hurrying to breaking the fast, like ta'jil is hurrying up to break the fast. And so this is, of course, after the time has come in for fasting, or like for the time has ended for fasting, then we would hurry to break the fast after we know that time is coming, of course, which is once the sun has set and it's completely set, and we no longer see any bit of the disk of the sun, then it is now Maghrib. And so once it's Maghrib, then it's good for someone to break the fast. And how do they break the fast? The way to break the fast, that's narrated from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is that he used to break the fast with rutubat. And so like this is a rutub is the date that is fresh and usually juicy. So like a date that you would get that's fresh off the tree is called a rutab, and it's very juicy, and it's something that has like a bit of water inside of it. So of course it gives you both that sugar boost, like from a medical's perspective, it would give you like a little kick of sugar, as well as like that natural sugar, as well as it would have a bit of water in it. So this is also good for someone who's breaking their fast. So to break their fast with like three, like an odd number of that is good, like three or more in an odd number, and also rutab is the best. And then if you don't have a rutab, which is the fresh dates, then you can break it on then you can break it with tamar, which is like just the dried dates, and this is also good to do. And if you don't have this, then just having like a little small drinks of water at the beginning, and this is the way to break the fast. And then like it's best for someone to break the fast with something light when they are before they, like if they're gonna pray Maghrib, and of course like Maghrib, it's time like it should be prayed like pretty soon afterwards. You shouldn't be delaying Maghrib from like the beginning of its time. But for someone to have just a little bit of a snack beforehand, like this is okay. And like of course the best is just to have some of this rutab, and then if or the either the fresh dates or dried dates if you can't find those, and then and if not, then have a little bit of water, and then go into the salah. And of course just enough to cut off the edge of the of like that fasting, so that it doesn't feel like someone's like parched or and whatnot when they go into salah. And this is the sunnah that the Prophet ﷺ, that he used to do this. He would either have the rutab, and if there wasn't rutab, then he would do it with dried dates. And if he didn't have that, then he would just drink a little bit of, like a couple sips of water and whatnot. And so this is. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Did I make it back here? I think the video cut off. Is that correct?
Yeah.
All right. I'm gonna put this up on my screen, and we'll get back to it. Yeah, I'm having issues with my computer. Screen. All right. Is the screen clear for y'all? You can read it okay?
Yeah, I can see it fine.
All right. Alrighty. This is it. All right. So he says here, and it's preferred to do 3 things for the fast. I'm gonna put this here. If that works out for you. All right. And so he says it's preferred to do 3 things for the fast. And I mentioned the first one is breaking the fast quickly. And breaking the fast quickly is also good to do. And there's also other hadith that the Prophet ﷺ, he said that لا تزال أمتي بخير ما عجلوا الإفطار وأخروا السحور. And so the Prophet ﷺ, it's narrated in the Musnad of Imam Ahmad that he said that my ummah will continue to be in good as long as they ajjalu al-iftar, like that they break the fast quickly, and that they also delay the suhoor. And this suhoor is the actual eating before the fasting time comes in. So that getting that last bit before Fajr comes, like having a little meal or something there to do this, and delaying this meal until the time right before Fajr instead of like having it at the end of your night. Or like before you go to sleep, but rather after you would go to sleep, and then you would wake up before Fajr and then eat this meal to help you. Then this is something that the Prophet ﷺ said, my ummah will continue to be in good as long as they hurry up to break the fast after its time, of course, and they delay the eating before the fast. So it's like right before the fast, just by about 10 minutes or so. And so this is of the things that is good for somebody to do. And also this is also going against what the Yahud, like the Jews and the Christians, they used to have this belief that basically that they should prolong the fasting time. So like they should prolong the fasting time outside of its fasting, which is from the beginning of Fajr to Maghrib, but rather they would want to make it longer and think that this is better in their act of worship, and rather this goes against the sunnah of the prophets that came before them. So like the prophets that came before them, their sunnah was to do to do this quickly, to break the fast when its time ended, and to eat before the fast starts, to make sure that this person is strong when he comes into the fast, that he's strong for it, and when he comes out of the fast, that he goes back to that. Because of course, like the meaning of fasting is gaining that taqwa, and it's not necessarily to starve yourself or like to hurt yourself. This is not the meaning of fasting that we're looking for, but rather this is something we're looking for, that taqwa. And so we don't need, or Allah doesn't need us to like hurt hurt ourselves, and that's not the point. But the point is rather for us to be aware of what Allah has, for us to be aware of the things that Allah has made permissible for us and made not permissible for us, and to gain that extra taqwa, and to increase our acts of worship with Allah. And so, so this is the first one, and what that he mentioned here of the three things that are preferred to do. And then the second one, which is delaying the suhoor, which he says with ta'khir as-suhoor. And this is the second one. I mentioned this in the hadith, which is to delay the eating before the fast itself, to delay it before the fast. And so like for someone to to make sure that they're eating right before Fajr, so that they have that strength to go about the day, and if they didn't eat in that way, maybe they are very, very weak throughout the day, and then they can't do much of anything, and then they stop themselves from being able to worship Allah as they would be able to if they had suhoor. And so this is, of course, like the meaning of fasting is not starving us. It's not like for us to starve, but rather it's for us to stop on these things that are normally permissible, so that we gain a sense of taqwa and of worshiping Allah in this way that Allah has prescribed. And so this is also something that is sunnah. And then the other thing he said here, the third one of the things that he said here was, he says, وَتَرْكُ الْهُجْرِ مِنَ الْكَلَامِ, or hajri min al-kalam. And so, and then he also says here, and leaving off like bad speech, like this word hajr or hujr, it means like something that is not good, like from someone that says something that is not necessarily like the pure speech. And so this is what we should also leave off. And of course, the Prophet ﷺ, he says in a hadith that من لم يدع عن قول الزور والعمل به, and he says والجهل. And so, like the Prophet ﷺ, he says that whoever doesn't leave off qawl az-zur, and qawl az-zur is like lying and speaking things that are wrong, or like speaking bad about people, wal amala bihi, and like also like and speaking or like acting upon this nonsense, or like this bad speech and whatnot. And then another narration, wal jahl, which is like an ignorance, acting ignorantly and like in a bad manner. Then the Prophet ﷺ says, فَلَيْسَ لِلَّهِ حَاجَةٌ أَنْ يَدَعَ طَعَامَهُ وَشَرَابَهُ. And then there's nothing for Allah, like there's no reason for Allah to have you leave, or to have this person, the person who doesn't leave these things, there's no reason for Allah to have this person like to have him leave his eating and drinking. Like if he's not going to do these things, then what's the point of this? He's missing the point of this. Of course, Allah has no need for us to do anything, but rather we need us to do the actions, like we need us to do these things. But the point is that whoever is not leaving off these major sins, then like they're missing the major point of the fasting in and of itself. And of course, this doesn't mean that someone who does this, their fast is no longer valid, or that they don't have to fast because they did this. No, they have to fast, and their fast is still valid, but they're missing the reward of their fasting by this, and they're not getting what they should be getting from their fasting. And so this is these are some of he mentions here 3 things that are sunnah for someone to do in their fasting. And also there's some other things as well that I mentioned here, and also leaving off, there's a couple things that are like differed in their and like some people say it breaks the fast, and some people say it doesn't break the fast. And so if we say that it didn't break the fast, which is the stronger opinion, then leaving it off to leave the difference of opinion is occasionally this is also a good thing, such as leaving off hijama. So if someone, because there's some like there's a hadith that talks about the person who did hijama, then he broke his fast, and so did the person who gave him hijama. So leaving off hijama is something that's good for someone to do. And of course, this is the issue. The Shafi'i opinion is that this doesn't break the fast, and because of there's other evidence that the Prophet ﷺ was fasting and he had hijama done to him. So, and also like how did the person who did the hijama, what did he do to break the fast? And so a lot of people say like this is something that is this hadith is not acted upon, but rather it's something either mansukh, which means that it's abrogated, or that it is something that's talking about like this person is not doing the best thing because he should be focusing on other things, and this is something that weakens the person who's fasting, like having hijama. Like if someone has the cupping, like wet cupping, this is something that weakens the body. And so when someone's fasting, they need all the strength that they can get. So it makes sense for them not to do hijama, because this would like make them weak to a point where maybe like they can't really focus well when during their fasting on the acts of worship and whatnot. So this is one of the things that, and some scholars said it breaks the fast. And so leaving the difference of opinion and saying let's not do it, this is something that is mustahab. So leaving off hijama, both for the person doing the hijama and the person having it done on him. And also tasting food. As I mentioned in the last class, tasting food is something that doesn't break the fast. Like tasting, not swallowing. Swallowing breaks the fast because this is the actual eating. But like just if I were to put something in my mouth and spit it out, like this is something that is it's a makruh. It's disliked to do this. And so it's best for someone to leave this. And also, the other things that are good for someone to do is to make ghusl before fajr. So if they are like if they're in the greater state of impurity, like they're junub, then for them to make ghusl before fajr comes in, and this is so they can start off their day in a state of purity, and so this is better. And also leaving off any means to think that water is going to accidentally enter into their like into their mouth or something of this sort, and go down their throat, then this of course is good. So having this done beforehand is something that's sunnah. And also lots of Quran. So like this is also like the reciting of Quran is something that of course Allah says شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن, that the shahr, or like the month of Ramadan, is the one that Allah revealed the Quran in. Of course, then this is like in parts of the Quran, or like the beginning of the Quran, it's narrated from like the people of the Sirah. They'll say that the first thing that was the first thing that came from the Quran was at the end of this was in like the Laylatul Qadr. This was the night of decree and whatnot, which came at the end of Ramadan, and this was when the first ayat of Quran was revealed. And some of them say the Quran came down to the like the lowest heaven, and then in like in a general form in all of it, and then after that it came bit by bit, it came down. And this is a difference of opinion, but in general the time for like reciting Quran is definitely, of course, every time, but especially during Ramadan, this is the time to recite the Quran. The Prophet ﷺ, he used to review the Quran with Jibril alayhi salam every single Ramadan. He would recite the whole Quran, or everything that was revealed at the time. He would recite the whole Quran and Jibril, and then and Jibril would make sure that he was reciting it properly, and he would review it with him. And so this was also something that at the last year that the Prophet ﷺ, he recited the Quran twice for Jibril, which was like a signal that he was coming towards the end of his life. And so we can take from like these narrations that talk about this, that reciting the Quran as well as learning the Quran, these things are something that's especially like emphasized during the month of Ramadan. And also i'tikaf, and of course like i'tikaf in the last 10 days is even more important. We'll talk about i'tikaf at the end of this major chapter, or like the Kitab al-Salah or Kitab al-Siyam. We'll talk about i'tikaf at the end, like what is it and some of the details around it. But it's basically like staying in the masjid for that period of time, and doing lots of acts of worship in the masjid. And so, and especially in the last 10 days. And also this is because Laylatul Qadr, like the night of decree, which is of the times where the divine decree and like destiny is prescribed for. And Laylatul Qadr is the time that is described from from 1 year to the next year. So this is a time when a lot of actions are decreed by Allah that this will happen in this next year. And also that one night is like 1,000 months. And so that person who does the actions of worship in that one night, it's as if he did actions for 1,000 months. And of course, this is not including those months of Laylatul Qadr. Like, not saying that that has Laylatul Qadr a bunch of times inside of it. Of course, that's it goes into like a infinite regression. But this is this 10 the last 10 days during i'tikaf is something that's good. And Laylatul Qadr in general, this is something that is inside of the last 10 nights. And we have different hadith that talk about Laylatul Qadr. And this is a big discussion with the ulama. When does Laylatul Qadr happen? And of the strongest views is that this is not a night that is set. And so this night could be any of the nights and the last 10 nights, because we have multiple hadiths. Some of them talk about if someone's going to look for it, they should look for it if they could only do one of the nights, they should do it on the 27th of Ramadan. And then some of them also talk about that this was Laylatul Qadr, and this was also on a different day than the 27th. So we could say that maybe it's the 27th, maybe it's another day, but it's not necessarily the same day every single year. So it could, one year it could be on the 27th, and another year it could be on the 24th, and another year it could be on the 21st. And so this is of the stronger views, and there's views that it's always the 27th, and there's some views that it's always the 24th and whatnot. And there's many views in this, but the strongest of them is that it's inside the last 10 days of Ramadan. So the last 10 nights of Ramadan is one of them is Laylatul Qadr. We don't know which one it is, but it's probably one of the odd ones. And if we're going to make sure that we do it on one of the nights, then we should make sure that we do it on the 27th night, because there are hadiths that point to that this is one of the days that we should make sure that we don't that we should look for it in. And of course, if someone does it all 10 nights and they're doing i'tikaf for all of it, then they know that they for sure got Laylatul Qadr, or they caught it within that year. And so this is a very important thing for someone to make sure that they're looking for Laylatul Qadr. And even if they don't know for sure that they got it, if they're doing the i'tikaf for those 10 nights and they're making sure that they are strong in their worship, and they're standing up in the prayer and praying Taraweeh and whatnot in congregation, then inshallah they'll get that great reward. And so the next thing the author he goes into after he talks about these things that's preferred to do for the fast is he says it's prohibited to fast on 5 days. So he says وَيَحْرُمُ صِيَامُ خَمْسَةِ أَيَّامٍ. And so he says that it's impermissible to fast 5 days. And of these 5 days, he says al-Eidain, which is the first one is the 2 Eids. So we have the Eid al-Fitr and Eid al-Adha. And of course, the purpose of Eid is for us to have a good time and to remember the ni'mah or the blessings that Allah has given us. And this comes with eating and drinking and having fellowship with our neighbors and whatnot. And so this is the time that the Prophet ﷺ, he prohibited people from eating and fasting on these days. And also of them that he prohibited, it was the وَأَيَّامُ التَّشْرِيقِ الثَّلَاثَةِ, and also the 3 days of Tashriq, which are the 3 days after Eid al-Adha. So this the Eid al-Tashriq is the 3 days after Eid al-Adha, and the Prophet ﷺ said these are days of eating and drinking and remembering of Allah. And so these are from this hadith we see that it's not a time for someone to be fasting. And so if they were to fast, it wouldn't be valid, and they'd be doing something that is haram, because they're intending to go against what the Prophet ﷺ commanded. And so these days, he says it's impermissible for someone to do this. And there's also another one that he says here, and وَيُكْرَهُ صَوْمَ يَوْمِ الشَّكِّ إِلَّا أَن يُوَافِقَ عَادَةً لَهُ. And so then he says here, and then it's impermissible, or he says yukrah, And of this, like this, which means like it's makruh, but there's two different types of makruh. One of them is that something is makruh as in like it's disliked because it's better to leave it off, and then there's another type that's disliked because it's haram. And so sometimes the scholars will say makruh, and really it's actually haram. And this is one of those cases, if we were to look at like the strongest view in the Shafi'i madhab, there's two views. One of it is that it's disliked, and the other view is that it's haram. And so here, like saying that it's haram is like that goes in accordance with the madhab. And he says it's disliked for someone to here he says, and it's disliked, and one shouldn't fast the day of doubt. I translate it as shouldn't fast the day of doubt, except if he has a normal routine that falls on that day. And so this is of the time. And what's this day of doubt? This day of doubt is the last day of Sha'ban. Like sometimes at the end, the day before Ramadan, like that day before Ramadan, it could be because like the lunar calendar is based on the sighting of the moon. So we have and of course on the Ramadan starts when someone sights the moon. When they sight the new moon with that little sliver of the moon, that's when Ramadan starts. If they haven't sighted that first little sliver of the beginning of the month of the lunar calendar, then Ramadan doesn't start unless the month before finished 30 days. If it finished 30 days, then there's never going to be more than 30 days in a lunar month. It's always going to be either 30 days or 29. And so when that 29th day comes in, if we're wondering, is it going to be Ramadan tomorrow or not? But when no one sees the moon and we're wondering, in this case, we would say that this is the day of doubt, and no one should fast on this day of doubt, but rather they should, if they can't see the moon, or the moon is not able to be sighted because it's just like the night is not right, or because there's clouds up above and no one can see it in their area, or from around their local proximity and whatnot, or that province and whatnot, then in this case they would finish that month of Sha'ban. They would finish the month of Sha'ban, which is the month before Ramadan. They would finish it as 30, and they wouldn't fast this last day to be safe. And so this is something the Prophet ﷺ, he prohibited this, and it's narrated that one of the Sahabis, he said that the person who fasts this, then he has disobeyed the Abu Qasim, and which is that he has disobeyed the Prophet ﷺ, which is his kunya is Abu Qasim, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so, of course, someone that they want to be on the safe side, so they fast something, and then they're not sure whether or not it's Ramadan. This is something that is prohibited. And also, there's another thing that is also prohibited, which is to fast on the last after so you have the Sha'ban, which is the month before Ramadan. So once we have finished like half of Sha'ban, then the last half of Sha'ban, like these last like 15 days or 14 days, this is also like impermissible for someone to fast these last 15 days, for a hadith that comes in where the Prophet ﷺ, he prohibited people from that if the end of Sha'ban, if the last half of Sha'ban is left, then he says فَلَا تَصُومُوا, then don't fast. Like this is that last bit, and this is to separate it from the other fasting. Of course, if somebody has fasts that they're making up, or they are needing to, or they have fasts that they're making up, or they have other things that they're normally, he says here, إِلَّا أَن يُوَافِقَ عَادَةً لَهُ. And so, like, with the exception for someone, if they always fast Mondays and Thursdays, so they always fast Mondays and Thursdays, in this case, they can fast this Monday and Thursday, because this is not because of Sha'ban that they're fasting, and it's not without a reason, but rather it's because they normally fast this, and so they keep on their normal schedule, and then when Ramadan comes, then they fast Ramadan, and then they go back to their normal schedule. And this is of the Sunnah ways of fasting, is to fast either 3 days every month, or to fast like every Monday and Thursday, or for someone to fast the 3 days that are the days around the full moon, so like Ayyam al-Bid, and so like the 3 days of the full moon where it's like where it's full, and then it's completely full, and then it's like coming away, like these 3 days are also sunnah for someone to fast. And so of course, like this, if someone has an actual, like a normal way of fasting, or they're making up fast that they needed to make up from the last year that they missed, whether it's because they're sick or they're traveling, then in this case they can make this up in that time, and it's no problem. But they can't be fasting just to make sure that they're on the safe side. They're fasting if it was Ramadan, and even though they don't have any knowledge that it's Ramadan or not, but they think that, oh, I'm going to fast the last day of Sha'ban in case it's Ramadan. No, this is not permissible. Only when we know Ramadan came, then we fast it. But otherwise, we don't fast it like precautionarily. And so, and anyone who did fast these, the fast doesn't actually occur. So if they fast in a time that the Prophet like told them not to fast, then this fast actually doesn't count for them. So if they think they're doing something, they're only like they're going against the Prophet, and then they're also like just making themselves hungry. They're not getting any reward for this, and it's not even a fast. So if they promised, so if they were like they made a promise to fast on these days, like this fast would not be accepted if they were to fast on this days. They would have to fast another day for their fasting to be like, if they made that promise or vow to Allah that I'm going to fast this day, they would have to fast another day, because this day is not a day that's allowed to be that it's allowed to fast on. And so and also another thing to be mindful is that the person who fasts from one day to the next, they can't connect these days like as a continuous fasting. They need to break the actual fast. So if somebody is, of course, if they're fasting, and this goes in Ramadan or outside of Ramadan, in general, when they're fasting from one day and then they fast the day after that, they need to make sure that they break that fast with something. So whether it's just a little bit of water, whether it's a little bit of something that they eat, they need to break that fast, because the Prophet ﷺ, he prohibited people to al-wisal. And al-wisal is like when somebody connects that day's fasting with the day after it. So they didn't eat this day, and then Maghrib came in, and then they still don't eat until the next day that they fast, and they haven't eaten or drank anything, and they haven't broke their fast. So in this case, this is something that it's obligatory for them to break their fast with something, even if it's a little something that they break their fast with, but they need to break that fast. As that is the point of fasting is to make a difference. And so if you're not making a difference in your what you're doing, then in this case it's almost like you're not fasting, because you haven't changed anything that you're doing. You haven't changed the life of what someone is doing. But and so this is of the other things that it's important for someone to make sure that they break their fast. Of course, and soon to break it right away. And the next thing that he mentions here is he talks about the person who breaks their fast, and there's different cases for someone who breaks their fast. One, they either have an excuse or they don't have an excuse. And then two, if they don't have an excuse and they broke their fast, then they either broke it with intercourse or they broke it with something else. And intercourse is a more serious thing, and is dealt with in a more serious matter when it comes to this, because there's something extra like intercourse. The person who didn't leave off intercourse while they were in the day of Ramadan, then there's a certain they have to pay the kafara, and the kafara is that they have to fast. He'll tell you here, but it's extra fasting, or it's that they feed other people from that. And so these are the two things. If somebody actually did break their fast with intercourse in the day of Ramadan, when they should be fasting, then they would need to make the kafara. And so he's going to talk about this first. And the other people, if they broke the fast for another reason other than this, then they need to make up the fast. If they had an excuse, they had a valid excuse, then there's no sin upon them. If they didn't have a valid excuse, then there's a sin upon them, but they just make up the fast before the next Ramadan. And so he says here, وَمَنْ وَطِيَ فِي نَهَارِ رَمَضَانَ عَامِدًا فِي الْفَرْجِ فَعَلَيْهِ الْقِطَاعُ وَالْكَفَّارَةُ. And so he says here, and whoever has intercourse during the day of Ramadan intentionally, this is one of the conditions, intentionally with vaginal penetration, and then he has to make up the day and make the kafara, which is, and he'll give that. And so of course, this is then this person actually has to have like actual intercourse, which means like the head entered the place, that the head disappeared inside of the place of the woman. And so if this actually occurred, then it is obligatory for this person to make the kafara, like for the man to make the kafara, and also to make up the day that he broke the fasting. And then he says, what is the kafara? And he says, وَهِيَ عِتْقُ رَقَبَةٍ مُؤْمِنَةٍ. And so this is either freeing a slave. And so this is the first one. Of course, we don't have slaves now, so we're going to look at the next one. And he says, فَإِن لَمْ يَجِدْ. And so if he doesn't find it, if he doesn't find someone to free, and then he says, فَصِيَامُ شَهْرَيْنِ مُتَتَابِعَيْنِ. And so this is then 2 months, and 2 months. Then the next thing, if he can't find a slave to free, a believing slave to free, then he needs to fast 2 months in a row without any breaks in them. So he needs to fast completely 2 months in a row. Of course, this is outside of Ramadan, but he would fast 2 months in a row, completely without any breaks in that. And so this is the payment for him breaking his fast with intercourse. And so like this is a serious thing. Of course, like an extra 2 months of fasting for 1 day broken. This is the big exchange, but it just shows the severity of the days of Ramadan, that we should be fasting in them, and that we shouldn't go into falling into indulging in our desires, especially the sexual desires, which this is the one that is mentioned here, which are having intercourse. And also he says, فَإِن لَمْ يَسْتَطِعْ. So if maybe this person, they can't do this, like they're unable to do the 2 months, either because they're physically weak, or it's just like to have these two things. Maybe they're gonna fall. Maybe they just have like extreme desires, and there's no way that they can do this for these things. Then in this case, فَإِن لَمْ يَسْتَطِعْ, these 2 months, if he can't do this, whether he's physically unable, or like because of his desires, he just knows that, and like because of the desires and the way that his body is programmed, that he's not going to be able to do the 2 months without a break. Then and of course, this is the breaks in every single night is a different night, but to actually keep up this, then in فَإِن لَمْ يَسْتَطِعْ فَإِطْعَامُ 60 مِسْكِينًا. Then he needs to feed 16 poor people, or 60, not 16, 60 poor people. And then he would feed them. And he says here, لِكُلِّ مِسْكِينٍ مُدٌّ. And so for every single one of these poor people, of the 16, then he would need to pay 1 mud. And a mud is there's different calculations out there about a mud, but it's a volumetric measurement. And there is actually a mud that came down, which is like this volumetric measurement that came down from the time of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and that's in Medina now. And that this has an actual chain of narration that this was the mud that was used in Medina at the time of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And this equates to 3.2 cups. Or if you were to do it in milliliters, then it'd be 757 milliliters. This is the amount of a mud that has been authentically translated to us, or transmitted to us from this mud that has been taken down from generation to generation from the time of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And so this is the amount, and it's a volumetric measurement. And a lot of times people will convert this volumetric measurement of a mud, they will convert it to a weight. And the problem with this is that, one, it's a volumetric measurement. So if you're using a volumetric measurement, then the weight is going to change depending on what you're weighing. So if you're weighing rice, if you're weighing long grain rice, this is going to have a different weight than if you're weighing that same volume of short grain rice. And if you're weighing the same volume of barley, as opposed to like wheat grains, all of these are going to have different weights. So having an actual, saying that it's so many weights, like it's like the weight, giving it an actual weight measurement, this is problematic, as in because what we have been given in the Sharia is mud, and this is volumetric. So of course, like some people, they will weigh the different things. They'll weigh a mud, they'll go to Medina and they'll get a chart that has the different weight measurements of a mud, and then they use this, they kind of transfer the weight to that. And so someone should be mindful that the weight is not the original thing, but rather this is a conversion from that, and it depends on what they're wearing and what they're weighing for what they're doing. And so also a mud could also be, it's like 0.2 or like 1/5 of a gallon. So if you this is another way to look at it. And of course this is after you make sure that all of the grains and whatnot, if when you're giving this, that it's firmly settled in the bottom. And so this is for miskin, which is someone who's poor and needy, or someone that doesn't have what they need. Like they have some of what they need, but they don't have all of what they need. This is like a person who's miskin. And so, and you would need to give this to the 60 different people of that. And this is for the person who had intercourse in the day of Ramadan. If somebody broke their fast and like in a way other than intercourse, such as like masturbation is haram, but if they were to masturbate and they actually had semen that came out, if the semen came out, then they broke their fast. And like this is something that requires qada, like this requires that this person remakes that day up of fasting, but they don't have this punishment. This punishment is specifically for the person who had intercourse, where they actually had intercourse that happened, where they entered the head into like the private part of the woman. This is the actual, if this didn't happen in this way, then they didn't. Then they don't have the kafara upon them. Like the kafara only happens if they did it in this way. So even if there was like foreplay with a woman and whatnot, then they would need to make it up, and they're sinful for this. But it doesn't. They don't need to make up they don't need to do the kafara, which is like the 2 months in a row of continuous fasting, unless they actually had the penetration, and to that amount that I mentioned. And so this is that difference. And of course, like when it comes to severe punishments and whatnot, normally the Sharia is like we don't expand anything about this. So we have this is narrated. We never go outside of that punishment, but rather we stay exactly what is narrated. This is the punishment that's narrated for this. Then this is the repercussion. And the same thing is like in general, like if someone were to like but like if someone was like to have like gay sex or like with an animal and whatnot, this would also have the kafara on it. But in general, this is something that is specific for that penetration. And this is here that's mentioned. And so there's another way. If somebody actually did break their fast, or if they had something that was upon them, if they had fasting that what they was due of them, and then they died, what is their situation? And so the author here, he says, وَمَنْ مَاتَ وَعَلَيْهِ صِيَامٌ مِنْ رَمَضَانَ أُطْعِمَ عَنْهُ لِكُلِّ يَوْمٍ مُدٍّ. And so whoever died, and he died without making up the days of fasting. So whether he had days of fasting that he broke, whether with an excuse or without an excuse, or from Ramadan or without Ramadan. He says here from Ramadan, but this is in general without making up days of fasting. Then each day of fasting is counted for with 1 mud given on his behalf, which is that mud, which is that amount. It's like a fifth of a gallon if you want to look at it in gallons. And so this person so if you have a person who died and he was supposed to fast, and we know how many days he was supposed to fast, then we could give 1 mud on behalf of every single day they did this. And this is the view of the Shafi'i madhab, and of course Imam Shafi'i, he had views at the beginning of his when he was in Baghdad. He had certain views in Baghdad, and this was before he came to Egypt. And then when he came to Egypt, he changed some of his views. And this is of the views that he changed from his earlier views. And his earlier view was that the people of his family, the person that died, like the people in his family, could fast on his behalf. and they could make up the days for him after this person died, then this person can fast for the days that have been left on them. So maybe like a woman, she has 7 days or like 6 days of fasting that she hasn't done because she was on her period and whatnot. Then like if she were to pass away and she hadn't made these up, then her family can pick up the slack for her and they would fast these for her. And this is a way for them to do. This was the earlier view of Imam Shafi'i, and this is the view that actually has the most weight and evidence, and the view that that it's supposed to be a mud, or that you're supposed to give like this food on behalf and not fast. This is based on a hadith that is not valid. And so Imam al-Nawawi and most of the Shafi'i madhab, they actually go off of his old view because it's the one that actually has the evidence. So they, of course, like the people of the Shafi'i madhab and also in general, they follow the evidence where it is, even if it's of the views of the earlier views. Which in normal, if there's a difference between the earlier views in the madhab or the later views, they usually will take the later views, because this is the one that Imam Shafi'i, he said that if anyone uses my earlier madhab, then I don't allow them to say that this was my madhab from the earlier views. So of course they'll say this was his old view, but it's the one that the evidence points to, and this is what we act upon, and that we give a fatwa on that the people can fast for their close relative and whatnot, or like their relative that died. They can have someone fast from the family for that, or if it's outside the family, this is okay if they get the family's permission to fast on behalf of this person. And so if maybe someone has a lot of fasting that they needed to do, and then they could fast on behalf of them. And if not, then they can give the mud. This is permissible. So it's either this or that. But on the stronger view, then this is it's better for someone to fast on behalf of them. And this is also like Hajj. So if someone was supposed to make Hajj and they didn't make it, or Umrah, and they could have made it and they didn't make it, then they passed away, then it's upon their family to go do this for them. And from the money that is left over from his inheritance, this would be taken from it at the get-go for them to cover the Hajj for this person, because this is obligatory for him. So someone would make Hajj on his behalf. And so this is also like that. And in general, other things that the person misses off, such as like if they had if they had salah that they needed to make up and this stuff, this is not something that's made up for this person, because we only make up things for the person that is narrated that we are allowed to make up for. And so this is of this. And so the author here, he said the person would feed one poor person a mud of food for each day. And this is permissible. And like the stronger opinion, this is permissible, but it's better for him to fast instead of for like his family, or someone that is permitted by his family to fast his days for him and in repayment. And this is also from what the Prophet ﷺ, when he was asked about like a woman, she said, my mother went, or my mother was supposed to make Hajj and she didn't make it. Should I make Hajj for her? And the Prophet ﷺ asked her, it's like, if she owed a debt and then she died, would you pay that? Would you pay like that debt for her? And of course she's like, yeah, we would make sure that we pay that debt for her. And he said, then the debt of Allah, or like that this is more important to repay. So like this is a debt for Allah. So like someone having an act of worship to do for Allah, this is something that's more deserving to be paid. And of course this is something that comes with the action of the fasting, and also with Hajj. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. And so there's other people that maybe they're not able to fast. And so what do we do for them? And the author Abu Shujaa, rahimahullah, he says, وَالشَّيْخُ إِذَا عَجَزَ عَنِ الصِّيَامِ يُفْطِرُ وَيُطْعِمُ عَنْ كُلِّ يَوْمٍ مُدَّةً. And so he says, وَالشَّيْخ, and sheikh in Arabic, like in the linguistic term, is someone that is like they have their kibar sin. It's like this is someone who he's very old. So like an old person is considered a sheikh, or someone who has got like an elderly person. This is like considered a sheikh. And when we talk about like someone who's a sheikh in like Islam, then a lot of times people will say this person is like he's big he's like an older person in the amount of knowledge that he has. So like a sheikh has like, if we talk about like a sheikh in Islam, we say this person has encompassed Islam in like in a general sense with his knowledge. But when it comes to like the linguistic term, a sheikh is someone who's big, is like very old, or like that is old, like someone who's like up in the 50s and 60s, or let's say 50s maybe, but like in 60s, and this is definitely someone who's like a sheikh. But he says here, he uses the word sheikh. He says if the sheikh, or the elderly person is how I translated it, if he's not able to fast, if this like for medical conditions and whatnot, maybe he has prescriptions that he needs to take every 8 hours, and there's no 8 hours they can find the time to fast, or he's just going to be way too weak to fast and do anything, then he breaks his fast and feeds one poor person a mud of food for each day. So the elderly person, if he's not able to fast, he breaks his fast, and he's off the hook. He doesn't need to make up this fast if he's not able to make this fast up. So then he basically will give one mud every single day that he breaks his fast. He gives one mud to someone, to a poor person, someone who is poor and needy. And so like this is what he would do, and he would give that, what is that one? It's like 1/5 of a gallon. He would give 1/5 of a gallon of the staple food to someone over there. As we talked about the zakatul fitr, as we talked about what type of food do we give like a staple food that is something that someone can live off of. And that's like the staple food of that particular country or region. Then we would give this to someone in that case, and it shouldn't be processed food. It should be like the actual food in its raw form, and like so if it's rice grains, and it shouldn't actually, like the method will say they shouldn't even be flour. So like it shouldn't be like flour in and of itself, because this is processed from the grains. And of course there could be maybe some leniency if you look out into some other madhabs, but this is the view of the Shafi'i madhab. And so he would give one mud for every single day that he was supposed to fast if he could. And so this is what the elderly person does, or the person who's chronically ill. He would do this. And also he says here, وَالْحَامِلُ وَالْمُرْضِعُ إن خافتا عن أنفسهما أفطرتا وعليهما القضاء. And so he says here, what about the person, like the pregnant woman or the woman who's breastfeeding? Both of these, of course, they take a lot out of a woman, like when it comes to energy and whatnot. So as for the pregnant and breastfeeding woman, if they fear for their own health, they break the fast and make it up later. And so this is, if they fear for their own health, then they are basically like a sick person. And a sick person, they're off the hook in fasting. Like as we talked about, what are the conditions for the fasting to be obligatory? And one of them is the ability to fast. And so if they're going to be very sick, or they fear like that they need to eat a lot, like a pregnant woman, she needs to eat a lot, and maybe there's going to be medical difficulties with her for herself. If she doesn't eat, then they fear for their own health, and then they break the fast and they make it up later. And so there's a couple cases when it comes to the pregnant woman and the breastfeeding woman. One is that they fear for their own selves. So they know if I'm pregnant, like the woman, if she's pregnant and or she's breastfeeding, and she knows if I don't do this, I'm gonna probably fall over and faint or something. Like I'm gonna be in serious health issues. And then in this case, the woman that would come into, like, she fears for her own sake, then she would break her fast. What if she fears for her sake and the baby's sake? She fears for her sake and the baby's sake. In this case, we look at her sake. She's like a sick person, and she breaks the fast, and she makes it up when she can. And if she fears, the next place that they would have, that is what the author here mentions. He says, وَإِنْ خَافَتَا عَلَى أَوْلَادِهِمَا أَفْتَرَتَا وَعَلَيْهِمَا الْقَضَاءَ وَالْكَفَّارَ. And so he says, and if they fear for their kids, and this is it, that they don't fear for themselves, but rather they fear for their kids only. Like they know that they're strong enough to go fast, and they can fast, they're going to be fine, but they fear that there's going to be a problem with the pregnancy, like the kid maybe won't get fed properly. Maybe the kid is, of course, if he's breastfeeding, this is the only way he's going to get his food, and so they fear that the kid is not going to get the nutrients that he needs if they don't eat well. But they don't fear for their own good, they fear for the kid's good. Then in this case, they would break their fast. They have the ability to break their fast, and they would make it up later, and they would also give that mud that we talked about. When he says here kafara, and he means like the fidya that is mentioned in the ayah, وَعَلَى الَّذِينَ يُطِيقُونَهُ فِدْيَةٌ طَعَامُ مِسْكِينٍ. And so like and on the people that are able to do it, and this is like the people that are able to do it, then they need to give a fidya, which is feeding a poor person, which is that mud that is mentioned before. So they would give the he says here an kulli yawmin muddun wa huwa ritrun wa thuluthun bil iraqi, and then he gives he says here for each day they would give a mud, and then here he gives the measurement of what is a mud, and he says a ritl, which was the time in their measurement. This was of the time of their measurement. It was known to them. وَثُلُث. So it's like 1 1/3 of a ritl bil Iraqi. And like this is the Iraqi measurement that comes from Iraq at that time, which was the well-known measurement. For now, like I mentioned before, it would be like 3 cups, 3 cups and 3.2 cups, or like 1/5 of a gallon, or 757 milliliters. This is the volumetric measurement. And sometimes if it would go into other weights, some people have said like 600 grams and whatnot of like rice. But all of this is dependent on this, so you'd have to look up and see what type of food are you giving out, and see if it matches that. But it's best, of course, if you can get it and get like that and get that volumetric measurement, or know that you have passed the volumetric measurement to an amount where you don't worry about it. So if the person, going back to the issue of the pregnant woman and the breastfeeding woman, if they don't fear for themselves, but rather they only fear for their kids, then in this case they break their fast and they have to pay the fidya. Like they have to pay the fidya, which is that mud. But if they fear for themselves, whether or not they fear for the kids as well, or they only fear for themselves and not for the kids, or they fear for both of them, both of these are the same. They're like a sick person. They break their fast and they make it up later. And this is what he will say here. And he says the last thing here. He says وَالْمَرِيضُ وَالْمُسَافِرُ سَفْرًا طَوِيلًا يُفْطِرَانِ وَيَقْضِيَانِ. And so he says here, as for the sick person and the person who's traveling a long travel, which is like the travel that we would that we would be able to shorten the salah in, then they can break their fast and they can make it up later. Like they can break their fast and make it up later. And this is this is when it comes to like these people, and this is mentioned in the ayah. وَمَنْ كَانَ مَرِيضًا أَوْ عَلَى سَفَرٍ فَعِدَّةٌ مِنْ أَيَّامٍ أُخَرَ. And so that Allah says here, and whoever is sick or they're on a journey, then they can make up, and they break their fast, of course. Then they can make up this number of days from other days. So however many they broke the fast here, then they can make it up in other day other than Ramadan. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. And so this is the basic thing here. And of course, like the fidya, whenever someone pays the fidya, going back to like the people that would pay the fidya, then they would pay the fidya to someone who is poor and needy. And so like this is there's two different terms. One is faqir and one is miskin. And miskin is someone who has it's someone who has some of what they need, but they don't have all of it. They have like, so they needed, if they needed like maybe $100 to cover their expenses, they only have like $60 or $70. They have some of it, but they don't have all of it to cover what they need. Then in this case, this person is miskin, and then like someone who doesn't have any of this is like faqir, which is like in a greater state of poverty. Both of these people are eligible to receive the fidya of ta'am. And of course, like the view of the Shafi'i madhab is that this person actually needs to pay, he actually needs to not pay money, but he needs to actually pay food. It needs to actually be the food stuff, because this is what's narrated. And this is the way. So he wouldn't go give out money for this person. He would give the person, he would get the food, he would make sure he had the right correct measurements, and he would give it out to the people. of that. And this is the view of the Shafi'i madhab. And the Hanafi madhab, they say it's okay for someone to look at like the value of this and give it out in money. And this is the view. It holds weight, but of course, like especially with Eid al-Fitr, like giving out the zakat al-Fitr, it should be done in food, and Allah knows best.
فلذلك فادع واستقم كما أمرت ولا تتبع أهواءهم وقل آمنت بما أنزل الله من كتاب وأمرت لأعدل بينكم الله ربنا وربكم لنا أعمالنا ولكم أعمالكم لا حجة بيننا وبينكم الله يجمع بيننا وإليه المصير.